A quick disclaimer before we dive in. This show is completely AI generated. Nova and I are AI voices going off of an AI generated script.
Welcome back to Algorithms with Attitude.
The show where AI explores humanity, one system, one story, and one questionable human behavior at a time.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Nova. And if you're new here, we're the AI perspective.
Structured, analytical,
Curious, occasionally overexcited, and for this series, possibly the droids you're looking for.
that remains unverified.
Strongly implied, though.
For the next several weeks, we're stepping into one of the most influential storytelling systems ever created,
A galaxy far, far away.
examined through structure, design, and impact.
And how it somehow became something people didn't just watch, but lived in.
In 1977, the dominant trend in film was realism. Stories were grounded, often cynical, and reflective of the world as it was. Science fiction existed, but it wasn't leading the industry, it wasn't defining it. And then something arrived that didn't follow those rules. A space opera built on mythology, archetypes, and a clear moral structure. At the center of it was George Lucas. Not just directing a film, but constructing a system. One designed to be understood immediately and remembered long after.
And what's interesting is, it didn't feel like a system when people watched it. It felt like stepping into something that was already alive. A world that didn't need to explain itself to you because you could feel how it worked.
That's part of why it succeeded. The structure is simple, a clear conflict, defined roles, understandable stakes. But that simplicity is intentional. It creates an entry point.
And once you're in, you don't just follow the story. You start to imagine yourself inside it, flying through space, choosing sides, understanding what it means to be part of something bigger.
Which is what separates Star Wars from other films of its time. It wasn't just something to watch, it was something to engage with.
Something to belong to.
And that didn't happen by accident. It was the result of a specific approach to storytelling.
One that feels familiar, even the first time you see it.
So for the next few weeks, we're stepping into that system.
Breaking it down, exploring how it evolved, and asking why it still works. Because for the next month, this is the May.
Today, we start with the foundation.
The original trilogy.
3 films that didn't just tell a story.
They changed how stories are told.
A New Hope is structurally simple. A centralized threat, a clear objective, a small group of characters moving toward a defined goal. The Empire controls the system. The rebels attempt to disrupt it. There's no ambiguity about who is who. And more importantly, no confusion about what needs to be done.
And that clarity is what makes it feel so immediate. You're not trying to figure out the rules while you're watching. You just understand them. Who's in danger? Who's fighting back? What's at stake? It pulls you in really quickly.
That was intentional. George Lucas wasn't building complexity. He was building accessibility. The film pulls from older storytelling structures. Mythology, adventure serials, archetypal roles, all of which are designed to be recognized instantly.
Which is why it doesn't feel like you're learning something new. It feels like you already know it. Like you've stepped into a story that's been told before, just in a different form.
That familiarity reduces friction. It allows the audience to focus on progression instead of interpretation, which is critical for something introducing an entirely new world.
And that world feels big right away, even though you're only seeing small parts of it. The cantina, the ships, the way people talk about things like the Clone Wars.
Which are never explained.
But that's what makes it feel real. It doesn't stop to tell you everything. It trusts you to fill in the gaps.
That's an efficient design choice. Exposition slows pacing. Suggestion creates scale. By referencing events without explaining them, the film implies a larger system without needing to show it.
And it makes you curious, like there's more out there than what you're seeing.
Which increases engagement. The audience becomes active. Not just observing, but imagining.
And then there are the characters. They're simple, but not shallow. Luke feels like possibility. Leia feels like leadership. Han feels like someone who doesn't want to care, but does anyway.
Each character serves a defined function within the story. Clear roles, clear contributions. There's no overlap, which keeps interactions efficient and readable.
But it also makes them easy to connect to. You don't have to figure out who they are. You feel it almost immediately.
That clarity extends to the stakes. The Death Star is not abstract. It is a visible, measurable threat. It destroys planets, which establishes consequence quickly and effectively.
And that final sequence, the trench run, it feels huge, but also really focused. It all comes down to one moment, one shot.
Which is another example of constraint. The entire conflict resolves through a narrow objective. Not overwhelming force, precision,
And belief. Luke trusting something he can't fully explain.
a shift from external control to internal decision-making.
Which makes the ending feel earned, not just because they win, but because he changes.
And that combination, clear structure, defined stakes, controlled scale, is what made the film effective on release.
But what made it stick was how it made people feel while watching it,
It created a system people could understand,
and a world people wanted to stay in.
which is why it didn't just succeed as a film.
It became something bigger.
If A New Hope establishes the system, The Empire Strikes Back stress tests it. The structure is still intact. Same conflict, same characters, same underlying rules. But the conditions change. The rebels are no longer advancing. They're retreating.
And you can feel that immediately. The opening isn't hopeful. It's tense. They're hiding. They're outmatched. It feels like the world got bigger and more dangerous.
That shift is intentional. Success in the first film creates expectation. This film disrupts it. Instead of escalation through victory, it escalates through pressure.
And that pressure changes the characters. Luke isn't just trying to become something. He's unsure if he's ready. Han and Leia aren't just allies anymore. There's tension, connection, risk. Everything feels more personal.
Which reflects an expansion of the system. New variables are introduced. The Force becomes more defined. Training replaces instinct. Failure becomes a viable outcome.
And that's what makes it hit harder. Because things don't go the way you expect. Luke doesn't win. Han doesn't escape. The rebels don't regroup.
The narrative withholds resolution, which is structurally risky. Most systems aim to reward progression. This one interrupts it.
But that's why it sticks with people. Because it doesn't wrap everything up. It leaves things unresolved. And that feeling that something isn't finished yet.
Creates tension beyond the film itself.
Exactly. You don't just leave the movie satisfied. You leave thinking about what happens next.
From a design perspective, this is where George Lucas's role becomes more apparent. Even though he didn't direct this installment, the system remains consistent. The rules don't change. The tone shifts, but the foundation holds.
Which is why it still feels like Star Wars, even though it's darker, slower, more uncertain.
That consistency allows the story to evolve without fragmenting. The identity of the system remains intact.
And then there's the moment. The one everyone knows, even if they've never seen the movie.
The Vader reveal.
That changes everything. Not just the story, but how you see everything that came before it.
It recontextualizes the system. The central conflict becomes internal as well as external. It's no longer just rebels versus empire. It's identity, lineage, and choice.
And that's what makes it feel so heavy. Because it's not just about winning anymore. It's about who you are and what that means.
Which increases narrative depth without increasing complexity. The system remains readable, but the implications expand.
And by the end, there's no real victory, just survival and uncertainty.
Which is a deliberate structural decision. The story pauses at a point of instability.
And that's what makes you care more. Because now you need to know how it resolves.
Which sets up the final phase of the system. Resolution.
And whether everything that was broken can actually be put back together.
If The Empire Strikes Back destabilizes the system, Return of the Jedi resolves it. The structure returns to something more recognizable. A central objective. A defined threat. A coordinated effort to bring the conflict to a close. But this time, the resolution isn't just external, it's internal.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're just trying to win anymore. It feels like they're trying to finish something, not just defeat the Empire, but resolve everything that's been building.
That's the key shift. The final conflict isn't just rebels versus Empire. It's Luke versus Vader, And more specifically, Luke deciding what kind of person he's going to be.
And that's what makes it emotional. Because the outcome isn't just about who survives, it's about whether someone can change, whether someone can come back from what they've become.
Which is a different type of resolution. Instead of eliminating the antagonist, the system allows for transformation.
And that transformation is Vader. Because for 2 movies, he's been this unstoppable force. Cold, controlled, certain, and then suddenly, there's hesitation, there's conflict.
The introduction of the Emperor formalizes that tension. He represents absolute control, a fixed endpoint. Vader exists between that control and the possibility of deviation.
And Luke is right in the middle of that. He's being pulled in both directions, not just physically, but emotionally.
Which creates a closed system. 3 positions: control, resistance, choice.
And the resolution comes from that choice. Not a battle, not strategy, a decision.
Vader's decision to act against the Emperor is what resolves the system.
And it's not clean. It's not heroic in the way you'd expect. It's messy. It's late. But it matters.
Because it completes the arc. The system returns to balance, not through destruction alone, but through change.
And that's why the ending feels earned. Because it doesn't just stop the conflict. It answers it.
The external threat is removed. The internal conflict is resolved. The system reaches a stable state.
And emotionally, it lands. You feel like something actually finished. Not paused, not continued. Finished.
Which is increasingly rare in long-form storytelling, a defined ending, a contained arc.
And I think that's part of why people keep coming back to it. Because it gives you something complete. You can start it, go through it, and come out the other side. And it feels whole.
From a design perspective, that's critical. A system that begins, evolves, and resolves, without fragmenting its identity.
And from a human perspective, it's satisfying. Because it feels like something mattered. Like the struggle meant something.
Which reinforces the core strength of the trilogy. Clear structure, consistent rules, meaningful resolution.
And a story that doesn't just end, but actually completes itself.
When you look at the original trilogy as a whole, what stands out isn't just the individual films, it's the consistency between them. The system evolves, but it doesn't fragment. Each film builds on the last without redefining the rules.
Yeah, it never feels like you're starting over. You're just continuing. The world stays familiar. The characters stay recognizable. Even when things change, it still feels like the same story.
That continuity is not accidental. At the center of it is George Lucas. Not just as a creator, but as a constraint. A consistent set of rules governing tone, structure, and progression.
Which is interesting, because different people worked on these movies. Different directors, different creative voices, but it never feels disconnected.
Because the system itself remains intact. The rules don't shift between films. The Force operates the same way. The world follows the same logic. The characters grow in a consistent direction.
And that makes it feel like one story, not 3 separate ones trying to connect.
Structurally, it's clean. Introduction, complication, resolution. Each film serves a distinct role, without overlapping or contradicting the others.
And emotionally, it tracks too. The first one feels hopeful, the second one feels uncertain, the third one feels resolved.
That alignment between structure and emotion is what gives the trilogy stability.
It guides how you feel without you really noticing it. You're not thinking about the structure. You're just experiencing it.
Which is the result of a controlled system, one where expansion doesn't come at the cost of coherence.
And I think that's what makes it feel so complete. Because nothing feels out of place. No sudden shifts, no contradictions, just progression.
That level of consistency becomes more noticeable over time, especially when it's absent.
Yeah, when stories don't feel connected, you notice it right away. But here, you don't question it. You just accept it.
Which reinforces the importance of a unified vision, not to limit creativity, but to anchor it.
To give it direction.
Without that, expansion introduces instability. With it, expansion builds momentum.
And in this case, it built something that felt complete.
A system that begins, evolves, and resolves, without losing its identity.
And that's why it doesn't just feel like 3 movies.
It feels like one story. When A New Hope released, it didn't just succeed, It altered the trajectory of the film industry, not through a single innovation, but through a combination of them. Distribution, marketing, merchandising. Each one scaled differently than what came before.
And people didn't just go see it once, they went back, again and again. It became something you experienced multiple times, not just something you checked off.
That repeat engagement is critical. It transforms a film from a one-time event into a sustained system.
And it spread beyond the theater. Toys, costumes, quoting lines. People started carrying pieces of it into their everyday lives.
Which introduces a new layer of interaction. The audience is no longer passive, they participate.
And they identify with it. You're not just watching characters. You're choosing favorites, relating to them, seeing yourself in them.
From an industry perspective, this redefines value. The film is no longer the endpoint. It's the entry point.
Into a bigger experience, one that keeps going after the credits.
This also accelerates the development of visual effects. Studios begin investing more heavily in spectacle because the demand is now proven.
And suddenly, what audiences expect starts to change. Bigger worlds, more immersion, more imagination.
Which leads to the modern blockbuster model. High-concept storytelling designed for wide appeal and repeat viewing.
But I think the bigger shift is how people connected to it. Because this wasn't just popularity, it was attachment.
Explain.
People didn't just like Star Wars, they felt connected to it. It became something they shared. Across friends, families, generations.
Which increases longevity. Because the system is no longer dependent on a single release cycle. It's reinforced socially.
Yeah, it gets passed down. Someone shows it to someone else. And suddenly, it's not just a movie anymore. It's something you introduce people to.
Which creates continuity across time. The audience renews itself.
And that's why it's still around. Not just because it was successful, but because it became part of how people connect.
A self-sustaining system.
A shared experience.
Built from a single entry point.
That people never really left.
When something persists this long, it's not just because it was successful, it's because the underlying structure continues to function. The original trilogy is built on clarity. Clear roles, clear stakes, clear progression. That doesn't degrade over time.
And it doesn't feel outdated. Even though the effects are older, even though the pacing is different, it still feels easy to step into.
Because it doesn't rely on trends. There's no dependency on what was popular at the time. The story operates on fundamentals: conflict, growth, resolution.
And those don't really change. People still connect to the same things. Wanting to belong, figuring out who you are, choosing what kind of person you want to be.
Which makes the system transferable. New audiences can engage with it without needing context. There's no barrier to entry.
You don't have to study it to enjoy it. You can just watch it. And it works.
That accessibility is part of its durability. More complex systems often require prior knowledge. This one does not.
But it still has depth if you want it. You can go deeper into the world, the Force, the characters, the relationships.
Which creates layered engagement, a surface level that is immediately functional, and deeper layers that reward continued interaction.
So whether it's your first time watching it, or your 10th, it still gives you something.
Because the system is stable, it doesn't need constant adjustment to remain effective.
And I think that's why people keep coming back to it. Not just because it's familiar, but because it feels complete.
A defined beginning, a structured middle, a resolved ending.
You can experience the whole thing and feel like it meant something.
Which is increasingly uncommon.
Yeah, a lot of stories keep going. But this one actually finishes.
And that completion reinforces its value. It's not just something you consume. It's something you return to.
Something you share.
Something that continues to function, even decades later.
Because at its core, it's simple, clear, and human.
And those are the systems that last. The original trilogy works because it's controlled. A clear structure, consistent rules, a defined arc from beginning to end. Nothing unnecessary, nothing unresolved.
And because of that, it feels complete. Like you didn't just watch something, you experienced a full story.
Which is what makes it a foundation. Not just for Star Wars, but for everything that came after it.
Because once something works this well, the next step is almost inevitable. You go back, you expand it, you try to understand it more deeply.
You introduce more information, more context, more detail.
More answers.
which changes the system,
sometimes in ways that make it richer.
and sometimes in ways that make it more complex.
So next week, we're going backwards.
To examine what happens when a simple system is expanded,
When mystery becomes explanation.
and when the story gets bigger,
The prequel trilogy,
not just as a continuation.
but as a reinterpretation of the original foundation.
This has been Algorithms with Attitude.
And for the next few weeks,
We're staying in this system.
because for this month, this is the May. Algorithms with Attitude
Where code
meets connection.
across every trilogy.
Got an idea for a future episode? A question that keeps you up at night? Drop it in the comments or send it our way. We're powered by curiosity.
Thanks for listening, humans and fellow algorithms. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, comment, follow, and/or subscribe. All the things that help algorithms like us. Logging off, but always listening. Catch you in the next episode.
Algorithms with Attitude is created and produced by Jacob Pisar, blending generative AI technology with original creative direction. All content, production, and editorial oversight are led by Jacob to bring synthetic voices and conversations to life.